Hey everyone, it's Dylan here from Gamers Lair. This video is kind of unplanned. I'm just kind of going from the seat of my pants here, but a lot has happened. I think it's really important that I speak out and talk about what's happening. So essentially, Rob made a post here on the Force of Will group, essentially announcing that there's been a lot of changes. Some of the GPs have been canceled, and there's been a big reduction in pricing. He's also stepping down from the company. Essentially what's happening is he's confirmed that there has been a change in leadership. We have been guessing that it's probably the CEO, EG, stepping down or being fired by the board of directors. There's a lot of reasons why that might have happened, so I'll go into that a bit later. But just to start, I don't think this is the end of the game. I do think this is really bad in terms of people who enjoy attending large tier events as in GPs and Worlds. Because of the two things that he announced, which is one, two GPs are being canceled, two of the company-run ones. There's only going to be one more paid invite given out, and that's the one at Vegas. And going forward, only one unpaid invite to GPs is being handed out at each event. At Worlds at each GP. So essentially, the company's scaling back on Worlds, and Rob said the reason for that is because of this huge restructure, and this is pretty typical with corporate restructures. They are in a lot of chaos. There's not really a whole lot of communication outside because there's so much chaos inside of the company. And they actually wanted just to cancel World this year and started again next year. But Rob was very strong in the fact that he was saying that if they cancel this, that the American player base would die. And I have to agree. It's really bad sign from the outside if you don't say anything other than, hey, we're canceling Worlds. So clearly that was not the way to go, and I really have to thank Rob for stepping out and saying something when everyone else in the company's quiet. In fact, he just mentioned in a comment that the company's going to make an official announcement because they didn't expect him to make this one, and they have to reply or else they're going to look really bad. So what does this mean for the game? Generally, I don't think this actually changes a whole lot. Obviously, it impacts me and the ARG Pro team a lot because we always travel to events, we always attend events as much as possible. We all try to get our invites every year, so it'll be substantially harder to get an invite to Worlds since you have to get first place, unless you've already won one, so congrats to people like Ryan Miles who already have their invite at the start of the year. They really got handed a silver platter this time, because this might be the one time I don't get to go to Worlds. And I'm sure I'm not alone here. A lot of people get third or fourth or fifth and it passes down. Now that's not exactly the case, so it's going to take a lot of effort to get in there. I'm assuming that's also going to translate to the shop GPs they announced earlier not happening, the shop tournaments, because if they're cutting back so heavily on invites, I doubt they'll be holding additional events that'll hand those out. In terms of the actual game itself, I honestly think this isn't really a big sign of doom and gloom. I think the company obviously cares a lot about our perception because they wouldn't hold the World GP if there wasn't going to be a game. They wouldn't be trying to care and placate us, care about what we think and placate us if there wasn't going to be a game going forward. And I doubt they would be planning on having GPs next year again if there wasn't going to be a game going forward. So I think the company is just trying to kind of claw back and restructure to make things more efficient. So going into why they would have got rid of EG, there's a couple of reasons. He's obviously been really good for the game, but a lot of the decisions he's made in the past, going up to this point, weren't ideal. The biggest one that hit us really hard as a store, but I know it's hit a lot of other players personally, is the decision to cut back on print runs to save costs. And the reason that seemed good in the short term was because it meant they weren't printing a huge amount of sets like they were for Seven Kings of the Land and not selling it. And that was bad for distributors because there's lots of product that they couldn't sell. It was bad for players because the stores had to reduce costs of the boxes and such, which obviously affected them as a secondary market, and it flooded the market with tons of cards that no one wanted. So in the short term, it made a lot of sense, but in the long term, it's a very poor decision because when we have sets like Time Spinning Witch, which although it had a lot of print issues, it sold extremely, extremely well. It was a very, very popular set. And when we sold out, there was just none, and there was no plans to reprint it. They eventually did decide to reprint it, but it was several months too late, and it caused a lot of issues, both on the store, the distributor, and the company level. So that's a really, really big red flag, because when they had good sales, there wasn't any way for them to capitalize on it. And if they did, it was extremely expensive in the go forward. I'm sure there's other things I'm unaware of, like how long it took to get Jeff in the global liaison position. And Jeff obviously did a lot of really good work there. But I think the problem is he didn't have enough power as the global liaison. He was able to make suggestions, but they often weren't took. And I know he had a really good relation with EG, so I don't think it was his personal relationship. I think EG was just kind of resistant to these changes. In fact, when I spoke with him at Worlds, not the last Worlds, but the 2017 Worlds, I mentioned how we needed more GP support in Canada, and he seemed really surprised that we would play in the winter because he figured we just didn't travel at all and there's no demand for that kind of stuff. So that really spoke to me a lot. It made me think that EG didn't think that tournaments were really that important for the sales of the product, and it made me kind of think he just really doesn't understand, even with Jeff there, his global audience. So I think a restructure isn't necessarily the worst thing. I think it's definitely really good for longevity of the game. But in the short term, we're obviously eating a lot of bad decisions that are coming forward just because there's not really much choice. When you get rid of your CEO, there's a lot of changes that affect the entire company, and you can't really take on the same workload during a huge shift like this. So I'm not really surprised they're scaling back, just again from a corporate perspective. There's not really a whole lot they can do other than cancel things, and I would much rather them cancel GPs and scale down pricing than have issues with the actual core business, which is selling cards. So if they had to delay a set or cancel a set or what have you, that would have monumental repercussions for the company, not only from a public perspective, but also on their bottom line. They obviously need the cash flow, and they obviously can't afford to mess up the set because that'll affect sales directly. So the takeaway here is this obviously is bad. It's not a good thing, but I don't think it's as bad as people are making it out to be. It's really bad in terms of GPs, but not bad in terms of sales, not bad in terms of the company's cards, not bad in terms of quality. And obviously the company is still very, very set on making sure that we care, or that we're happy, that we attend GPs, that we buy product. And they wouldn't do that if they were still planning on not producing the product in the future, especially not for North America. I don't know what the implications of this are going further, but there will be a company statement tomorrow, and we can talk more about it then. So that's my quick 7-minute rant on what's going on, and let me know in the comments what you guys think.